everyone out there. Welcome to session 5 Q&A. Today we're playing it real fast and loose. This sleeper just woke up. So your teacher's a little hungover today. It's totally fine. We're just gonna be real calm and even. And how'd you guys like that session? I mean, it's so good, right? But before we get into all of the questions going on, I want to take a minute to talk about Patreon. I just overhauled the whole thing. I'm partly inspired by Dune. That we were talking about that the Duke, wanted to destroy all distinctions, like all class distinction, and never think of deadly order again. And that was kind of like an impetus. Like I was already feeling that way about my Patreon because before I had all these tiers. A lot of people have tiers where you join for $1 or $5 or $10 and you get certain things. And it always made me, I just think that's a little morally and ethically wrong to like give certain people more things because they just happen to be more well off. Because someone who's really broke who's giving me $1, like that's worth just as much to me than someone who's not broke at all and giving me like tons of money, So I wanted to get rid of it, and I did. And it was actually after Game of Thrones. I had watched that Daenerys just fuck shit up with her dragon. And that was another impetus that I need. Like, Dune and Game of Thrones came together and, like, finally gave me, because I've been wanting to fix this for, like, 6 months, finally gave me the energy to, like, get it done. And in a night, after I saw Daenerys fuck shit up on her dragon, I was like, I'm ready to fuck shit up on my dragon. And then I got on the computer and I totally fixed the Patreon with T-Bone. He was helping us. We were fucking doing it. We're just like, we're done. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So we got it done. And so now, if you join for whatever a month, give me whatever, it doesn't matter. You get access to everything. We have a exclusive video feed that we've been doing. I have a 16-minute video about Paul's awakening as through the lens of the Kabbalistic tree of life. I've been reading a book on the Kabbalah. It's something that I study like in my spare time for kicks, and I've been studying it for the past few years. And so while I was reading this book, and also in tandem reading just sections of this Kabbalah book that I bought at a used bookstore, like they synced up. And I was reading about the Doth sphere when I was reading about Paul's awakening, and it was like there's so many things that I felt like so many comparisons to be made. And I mean, the term Kwisatz Haderach is a Kabbalistic term, so Frank Herbert was absolutely aware of these concepts when he was writing this. And so I think that this is my theory of what he's trying to say of how Paul, like, it's insane. Like, it's, okay, we're back. Also, by the way, it's Mercury's in retrograde, so I ain't even stressing. This is just going to happen. We're going to have a lot of technical difficulties over the next few weeks. Everyone get ready. Batten down the hatches. Don't get pissed. It's just bullshit. Who cares? 4 times a year, I feel like I get to not care when technical difficulties happen. Not like they don't happen every fucking day of my life, but I can use it to chill for the next few weeks. Anyways, okay, so also I've posted videos about Valerian. I post videos about I'm doing this diary series where I kind of just am really real talking with you about what exactly is going on. So it's kind of like a reality show where I have that, you have that camera where you get to go and talk to like, this is what's happening in America in this house, like that's what I get to do a little bit on there. And then we talked about War of the Planet of the Apes. We talked about Game of Thrones. We talked about the last few episodes. So yeah, if you're interested in that, join Team 19 and yeah, get some of that action. Also, there's going to be discount codes, activity feed stuff, behind the scenes, all sorts of fun stuff. You kind of get to be my test audience, like where I get to test out ideas on you and give you sneak peeks, and it's a fun relationship. Anyways, all right. So let's start our live Q&A. A lot's happened. I'm going to start with questions from my Team 19 members on Patreon. And by the way, also, I do want to thank everyone for us having to skip a week. There was some, we needed some time. Everyone needed some time, and thank you guys for your patience. All right, to the questions. James Garner asks, the portents and predictions that the Missionaria Protectiva set down on Arrakis that Paul seems to be fulfilling are uncanny. Doesn't this imply that the Bene Gesserit who slipped these predictions and signs into Arakeen culture were able to actually see the future? Or were they just that good at predicting the future through means of planning? Like maybe they knew where their breeding program was ultimately going and foresaw all of these little factors as inevitable. Which do you think? All right, let me take a sip of water before I tackle this one. This is I'm glad you asked that, James. Okay. So, I've been thinking about this as well. If you think about the Bene Gesserit, at their very top rank, like what they're trying to achieve by sifting humans and trying to find the most refined humans that they can find and become the most refined human, in their opinion, that you can become, which is a Reverend Mother. A Reverend Mother is a Bene Gesserit trained woman who advances to the highest level, and you take the poisonous water of life. It's a narcotic. You have to have your own awakening, much like Paul's awakening, and it's called the spice agony. Like, it's really intense, and a lot of people don't survive it. Like, people do not survive it. But once you go through this agony, your genetic memories are unlocked from your past, and you can talk to everyone on the female side, and you can see their memories, and like you can like go into a trance where you just go back in time in your memory and just talk to whoever, or even see through their eyes. It's really cool. But the thing is when they get this, all of the past is opened up to them and they see it all at once. And that's why it's like such an agony, because they just are like, oh my God, they see so much, and they see how awful human beings are and how we're so violent and how like we're fucked up. Like, you see the ultimate truth of like, you have to see humanity in its naked truth, but then you still have to be able to love it, you know, and come back and like be like, okay, I'm going to work to make this better. You know, you're confronted by the truth of the ugliness of humanity when this happens. And so, okay, so the Bene Gesserit order are at the top just all these women, like tons of these women, like so many of these women who are ultra aware, super like, I mean, very much in control of themselves. So these are very powerful human beings. These are very high vibrational beings. So you have a group of these women. And from behind the scenes, they have been manipulating all of these people, all these politicians, all of these situations, all of these religions to create a Kwisatz Haderach, which is one of their goals. But their ultimate goal is, as the mother of humanity, they want to see humanity evolve and mature at a steady rate. You know, that's a good rate. But see, this time when they reached for the Kwisatz Haderach, they reached too far. Like, they were reaching for a branch that was like really far. But the thing is if anyone's gonna reach this fucking branch, it's these crazy bitches, okay? Like, these people are like on another level. And when you have a very small group of determined individuals, like, do not underestimate the power of that. And this is not a small group of determined individuals. This is a large group of very determined individuals who are aware in levels that nobody else in the universe is aware on. And what is their greatest dream? Like, these women, these women's greatest dream is to find a man that's like them. I mean, what's any woman's greatest dream? Is to find a man who's like you know? And so they're trying to breed a Kwisatz Haderach, which is a messiah. In the Kabbalah, Kwisatz Haderach means a shortening of the way, or one who can be in many places at once. And like, which is also like the ultimate compliment, I think. You know, that's pretty awesome. Like, I think it's really cool that these women get together, like, we want to make the ultimate man, you know, like, we want to make him. And they think about this all the time. And so when you have a bunch of people who are actively pursuing this, also thinking about it, I mean, they've manifested it. Like, they absolutely, the Bene Gesserit did manifest this. They didn't know if it was ever going to happen. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, well, we want to create a super being. Like, they think that they can, though, because you just constantly refine over time. That's why they have this eugenics program, is they're constantly refining and breeding these different people together to, like, create this specific genome that can be unlocked, and so this man can see into his past in the way that they can see into the past. Now, when Paul, but the thing is they were reaching, okay, so back up. There's like so much to talk about here. Back up. You have, Paul wasn't supposed to be a thing. Like, Jessica was supposed to bear only daughters, and so her daughter, who is a grandson of the Baron, or a granddaughter of the Baron, his granddaughter was supposed to be married to his nephew. Okay, so like, they're creating, like, through specifying these bloodlines, they're creating, like, through this weird incest. I mean, they're creating, like, let's be real about it, what's going on. But they need these two people to get a certain something out of the genetics. Like, something is wrong and they're trying to refine something. But Paul, he came too quickly. Like they're not ready for him. Like they're super not ready for him. And because again, life finds a way. Like it's just like fucking Jurassic Park. It's just like fucking Jurassic Park, where people think that they can fucking mess with this shit and that they can control it. You cannot control that kind of power. You can tap into it. You can use it, but you have no control over it. You know, if you really tap in, like, I mean, it's like you just, it's Pandora's box. It's Pandora's box. And they've been trying to open that box for a while. They finally got it. And so now you have Paul, and he realizes that he's more, and the thing is, he's not able to see in his genetic memories yet, okay? Time has fallen away from him, but not in his actual, like time in the external has fallen away from him, but his internal time has not fallen away. But he can see the patterns of everything that's been going on with all the information that he's been gleaning as a mentat and everything as like being in this situation, seeing all this, growing up in it. He can see what happened. He just sees what happened. You know, he's just like, oh, this is obviously where that came from. Oh shit. Like using all of his computational power, he's able to arrive at these like conclusions. But it is more than just conclusions, because he's able to take his awareness like out of whatever, I don't know, what most people, everyone else is in, and raise it to where he can like do the winds of time and like let me feel like what air current is going, like he feels the currents of the universe, I guess is what it is. And now he's able, okay, so fuck, I'm like getting so, I'm like I told you, I'm really I'm a little hungover today. It's like I haven't had a lot of sleep, I'm gonna be really honest. So there's gonna be some rambling, but okay, so yeah, so that's what Paul is. So he is something different, and he realizes he's not just the one who points the way and who can see into the future. He's more than that. He is, like you said, he's a seed. He's a bomb. You know, I mean, his awareness has just exploded, and he sees so well that he sees like, well, if I'm going to fix something with my powers, the only thing worth fixing is humanity at large. Like everyone in the Imperium. He sees the race consciousness of humanity. He's tapped into the race consciousness of humanity because we're all connected. Like humanity in the future and now, we're all like psionically connected in weird ways, okay, that we don't understand. These are subtle energies. Like this is where mystery school shit comes in to try to explain stuff like this, but you can never really explain it because the mystery of life isn't a problem to solve. It's a reality to experience. That's why it's fun, you know, because we don't know. And the thing is okay, so we're just talking about how everyone is like, they're breeding, like this is incestuous. Like, I mean, the Baron was sad that he didn't get to rape his grandchild. I mean, he doesn't know it's his grandchild, but like he would have raped his grandchild, and what an awful, decadent, horrible act and thing that is, you know? Like, and if that's what's going on within this empire, that's disgusting and things need to change. And so that's what Paul's here to do, you know? He's like, no, it's like a Hunger Games, you know, where the capital is just like, it sucks. Like you have to get rid of it. It's not going to work. And so, but the thing is that the conditions that humanity has created, and Paul being humanity, like the Bene Gesserit represent humanity. They feel like they represent humanity. So he's a product of them, and they've created this physical, and women would create a physical like Messiah. Like I guess it would take a group of women, because women bring life into the universe. Like literally, like we grow things from nothing into something, and then they're like turned into full-grown people. It's a whole thing. So it makes sense that Paul would have to come from the Bene Gesserit. But yeah, so now there's this situation where he's the perfect leader. Like he's been groomed, and he's charismatic. Like more than just being good at his job and being a super fucking badass and a perfect fucking Uberman, is that he is lovable, charismatic. He has every reason to take over. He has every fucking right to take over according to humanity's rules of the Imperium that they have laid out, you know, through their government and through their law. He has every right. And so, and he's at a Atreides like thing where he makes people love him really easily. So you have this Messiah. He's now like becoming this Messiah who's going to lead humanity to ultimate survival. But the way to ultimate survival is through chaos. And so he realizes that in his name, a holy war is going to happen. A holy war is going to happen. And a jihad. And this war is going to touch every planet in the Empire. It's going to disrupt everything. It's going to disrupt everything that's been going on in this empire. And this disruption, from this chaos, you know, humanity steps onto the golden path. But the golden path is not something we talk about now. The golden path is a concept that comes up later in the books, specifically in God Emperor, which is the 4th book. And the 5th and 6th book, like, okay, so, yeah, God Emperor, we're on the golden path. The 5th and 6th books is like the ramifications of that, like the aftermath of being on the golden path and getting where you're supposed to get. It's really fascinating. But Paul's taking the first steps towards that because the sleeper has awakened. He's able to see a course for humanity. And right now, it's chaos. And he's a chaos bringer who will just totally disrupt everything in the empire. So, and he knows that a lot of people are going to die, like in his name, under his flag, you know, like under the Atreides flag. And if you remember that Leto was talking about how you'll do things like under this flag that will make you like not like yourself. You know, he's talking about like this flag will mean many things for you, you know, and you're going to have to do fucked up things in the name of this flag, you know, and it's going to haunt you to a degree. And that's absolutely what Paul has to face at the end of his awakening. He faces that. He's like, oh my God, I have to be the one to bring war, total chaos to this entire empire. He realizes how many millions of people are going to die in his name. I mean, we've seen how fucking crazy the Fremen are. He has a Fremen army, okay? The Fremen will fucking, like, they murder anyone. Like, they're crazy, okay? Like, he's got, like, the most intense fighting force in the universe behind him, you know? There's, like, no one can tell him no. And so, so he realizes the weight of this, and he sees it, and he just has to, like, accept it. And even though it pains him, though, it is a burden to him. Like, he hates the thought of, like, having to do this. He doesn't look forward to having millions of people die in his name. Like, he does not look forward to that, you know, at all. But he's on that path, and he's like, well, this is what I was fucking made for, so I have to fucking accept it. And that's what he does. And it's, like, so amazing. It's so amazing. All right. I rambled on there for a bit. I, like, went way, like, I just totally downloaded on you guys. But, back to the questions. Would you consider Dune more fantasy or science fiction? And apart from Dune, do you like fantasy or science fiction better? Thanks for making Dune Club. It's awesome. From Florian Aman. Well, hello, Florian. I consider Dune like an alchemical work of anti-science fiction. Like, it's not, because science fiction, well, it is science fiction. I mean, eugenics is a scientific branch, and this is like the soft sciences. Like, this is soft science fiction. That's what it is. I would say it's soft science fiction. But it also, I wouldn't say it has fantasy elements. I would say it has, not, what's the word I'm looking for?
We were talking about this last night.
What?
We were talking about how there's a world based on our reality.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's not
yeah.
fantasy at all.
Yeah, like Frank Herbert is creating an ultra-realistic, like living, breathing fictional universe that he's running the simulation in to show us, through his fiction, to show us these greater awarenesses of how we shouldn't want a messiah, because if we get one, like, we're going to get one. If we keep asking for one, we're going to get one, and you're not going to like it. Again, wait until book 4 when you have God Emperor.
It's a reality based in our reality. It's not based on fantasy.
Oh, yeah. It's not, yeah, you're right. It's not fantasy because it's not based in a fantasy reality. This is based in our reality. So it's anti-fantasy, soft science. Well, it's got it's infused with real life mysticism from all of our own philosophical and theosophical traditions.
Well, what are some examples of fantasy?
Well, Lord of the Rings is right. Fantasy. I would say that Star Wars is more fantasy than science fiction. It's not about the technology or, you know, some advancement in technology. It's not really about that. It's about other
aspects of science.
I mean, there's aspects of it. It's flavored with science fiction, but it's really fantasy flavored as science fiction. And I would have to say that I read a lot more horror than actually science fiction or fantasy. I've read some fantasy. I've read the Wheel of Time series. I've read some of the Sword of Truth series. I have read Song of Ice and Fire series. I have read what else have I read? There's a few others that I'm forgetting. Oh, like there's this Joe Abercrombie's. I can't remember the name of it. It was like I don't know. I've read a few of those, but I didn't read those till later. And there's a lot of science fiction. There's a lot of science fiction that I haven't read that I feel embarrassed that I need to read. But I have read a bunch of science fiction stuff too. I've read Ender's Game. I really love Ender's Game. Um, Ready Player One is science fiction. I think that one was really interesting. Although I don't know about this movie. We'll see. Obviously, the Dune series is like my thing. I did read Foundation, but I was like, I couldn't get into it. And I felt like I'm supposed to, like, this is supposed to be kind of like I think it's like, if Dune doesn't work on you, but you still like science fiction, try Foundation series. Because Foundation series, the tone and the flavor is like 180 degrees from Dune. Like it's not like this character driven thing, you know. It's with this. It's not like it doesn't have this pageantry that Dune has. It's very cut and dry and very straightforward, which a lot of people prefer. I like the fucking crazy whatever. But yeah. So, but again, the main thing I have read though is horror. Let me give you a couple recommendations. You should read Joe Hill's 20th Century Ghosts short story collection. He's the son of Stephen King. It's amazing. You should read It because the movie's coming out pretty soon. That one's like so good. I love a lot of Stephen King. I've read a lot of Stephen King. I've got a few other things too, but I don't know. Horror is a whole other subject. So, anyways, moving on. Let's go to our next question. Okay, so Epileptic Tiger asked, this is my favorite part. Paul finally gets his powers. Where do you think that they originate? Seems like the trauma of losing his father tears away his conscious mind, exposing subconscious precognitive dreams. He has mentat logic and Bene Gesserit organic analysis and a mind-altering drug. He could be calculating everything that ever happens, but he dreamed the future. He knows about the mission area. He knows Ollie's name. Okay, so let's just go back to Paul's gets his powers. Where do you think they originate? Well, I talk about this in the 60-minute video, but I'm going to give you a little teeny hint of it as explained through the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So I think that the Kabbalistic Tree of Life has all these spheres on it, and they're levels of different emanations of the divine, of how our universe comes into being, because we're in the lowest one, on the lowest one, Malkuth, and it's like where spirit crystallizes into matter. All the other things are not physical realms. Like they're all, spirit is not crystallized into matter. But it's starting to, you know, it's like forming itself as it goes down this tree. And so Paul's mind, like there's this one sphere called Doth, and Paul's mind, I think, passes through Doth into the infinite, because there's a part of the tree that is infinite and a part of the tree that's like part of the physical universe where forms are made. There's a formless infinite and then a form part. And so he passes from one part to another. And I think that Frank Herbert knew about all of this, knew about the Kabbalah, and was absolutely thinking of it when he was writing this. Another clue that I got is when he writes about Leto's death. Like Leto and his son both had this great revelation, and Leto's mind passes into the other side, onto the unmanifest. And I love the description. It was saying like formless rays of black light. And I was just reading about that in my Kabbalah book. It's talking about the unmanifest and like how you would try to think about it. And it's like a Zen koan where it's like a mind breaker, where you think about it and you're like, that doesn't make, like black light, you know, like that doesn't make any sense. Like, but you have to break your mind and go past logic to kind of try to get to the higher reaches of the tree. And that's, so yeah, so his dad thinks about how the day the flesh shapes and the flesh shapes the day, and like sees that infinite loop that we're in, you know? And that's also what Paul sees. Like he also sees the same thing. So yeah, so that's what I think. I don't know if you want to know more, become a Team 19 member, 60-minute video. It has like visuals, so I can't explain it without a visual right now. It's like totally, you gotta have a map. It's a map, it's a cosmic map. On to our next question. I know this may be a very large subject. Is it possible to highlight all the philosophical topics covered in Dune, from Zen to existentialism? Frank Herbert seems to quote and borrow a lot from philosophical masters. Loving this series, and despite reading the book 20 years ago in my teens, I'm getting a lot out of Dune Club and following along each week. I get a lot out of Dune every time I read it. Every time, and I read it every few years, and then I'm like, oh my god, like I realize new things. Like every time I fucking read this book, it's insane. I highly recommend reading it every so often. But as for, is it possible to highlight all the philosophical topics covered in Dune? Well, it is all of the philosophical topics. That's what's powering this whole novel, is that Frank Herbert has done a lot of research into all of the philosophical traditions, like all of them, from Zen Buddhism to Taoism to, I mean, he's the Confucianist Zen part. You know, I mean, there's so many types of Buddhism that kind of branches off. And then he's also absolutely aware of, you know, you have Jewish concepts, Judaic concepts, Christian concepts. You have you have all of it, Muslim concepts, every Abrahamic religion, everything that you've ever thought of, and not just religion, philosophy. So everything who's tried to talk about anything, Frank Herbert's kind of done a little bit of research on it, and he kind of synthesizes. This is exactly what he does. He's in his Mentat brain, because he's a Mentat, okay? Let's be real about it. Like, Frank Herbert's kind of a Mentat. In his Mentat brain, he has consumed all of this information about all of these different traditions, and he's also probably used mushrooms, because he was a mushroom farmer. And he's come to some great realizations by chewing on all of this mystical data. And he has synthesized this down to specific truths that he sees across every religion. And he highlights those truths that are brought up again and again and again throughout this book. And that's what the Orange Catholic Bible is. The Orange Catholic Bible within the novel is a book where a bunch of people got together and talked about all the different theosophical traditions and then synthesized them down into their, you know, their roots, you know, like got down to it, got through the clutter. Because you have to, like we were saying, there's a death and rebirth, and you have to synthesize some things sometimes, because you just have, like, no one thing is correct. And so when you have so many different religions vying for power, why don't you just take them all and then synthesize them and then start over and then see where that goes? You know, you kind of have to clean house every now and again, philosophically speaking. So yeah, it's everything, David. It's everything. So it's all the blanket. David also asks one more thing on the meta subject matter. Before I started into chapter 1, I read the afterword by Brian Herbert, Frank Herbert's son. I don't think I ever realized the impact of what this book had on the Herbert family. Frank probably walled himself away from his family in order to complete his masterpiece. You can see some of this reflected in the writing, the relationship between father and son. A lot of comparisons between Leto and Jessica versus Frank and his second wife, Beverly. And you are 100% right. That is the price that Frank Herbert paid to create this novel, is he had to hyper-focus so hard. I mean, he did 6 years of research before, and he was already planning the first 3 books. He wasn't just planning the first book. He had the first 3 laid out during those 6 years, like parts of them kind of written, you know. And then Dune came together, kind of figured out exactly what he wanted to do with it, and then he wrote that one. Went through 19 publishers to get it published. Finally got it published through a car manual company. Like a fucking company that made car manuals. That was what they published, the Chilton. And while during this time, he couldn't work. He could not work. He had to research all the time. He had to be in the idea sphere 100% of the time. And so his wife, Beverly, went back and she wrote copy and did marketing and advertising and things like that. And so she went out and became the breadwinner while he worked on this novel, you know, and she supported him because she believed in his work. And she was, from what I've read because I have read Frank talk about her and other things, his wife Beverly absolutely was Jessica, and Jessica is inspired by his wife, because he talks about how she has almost this prescient, you know, like she just knows things that are going to happen, and she tells him those things, and he's just like struck by the wonder of her almost psychic abilities. You know, he feels like she's really got some shine to her, and is really like amazed by that. And you see that in the character of Jessica, how much he lovingly writes her. And but he also, like, I remember Jodorowsky was talking about how he met Frank Herbert when he was trying to make Dune, and they didn't get along. Like Frank Herbert and Jodorowsky did not get along, and I totally understand why. I mean, you can't get two guys like that in one room. I mean, that's just too much. They have too much like baggage, like mental shit going on. You can't have people like that. It's like it's not egos. I mean, it is egos, but it's like more than that. It's like intellect and like alchemical mastery shit, you know. And so he was saying, Jodorowsky was saying that he didn't like that Frank Herbert, the way he like ran his household, and that he needed complete silence when he was working. And so Brian was probably yelled at a lot for being a kid and being like, your father's, you know, you can't come into the office. Like he couldn't come into the office. Like when he was in there, you can't knock on the door. He was in there a lot. And I've also read that Brian Herbert say that he feels like his father spent more time with Paul than he did with him, which is like really fucked up. I mean, like that's fucked up. And that's the price he paid, and his family did suffer for it. And particularly Brian suffered for it. It wasn't his wife Beverly that suffered as much as Brian did. And I mean, he even moved his family to like the middle of the woods, I think in Washington at one point, to have a self-sustaining farm and see if they could live just on a self-sustaining farm, because he was super into self-sufficiency. I mean, he's like the Henry David Thoreau of science fiction. It's like super nuts. So yeah, it was you know, he isn't perfect, and that sucks. And we all have to pay a price for doing something great. You can't have everything. You can't have a family and create like this alchemical masterwork and be this and do that. Like there's just so many things. It's like the triangle. You know, there's three sides of a triangle where you have faster, better, cheaper. And you can't have all three. You can pick two, you can't have all three. And so, yeah, poor Brian got sacrificed. That sucks. Sorry, bro. That's a bummer. Anyways.
You know what it's like.
Well, yeah, I kind of know what that's like. I kind of know what that's like. And like, but that's the thing too, is like, I find myself like loving these guys. Like, I'm just like, I don't care what they created. Like, it was worth it for me, you know? Like the thing is even though Brian was denied that joy of hanging out with his dad, the joy that thousands, millions of people around the world get from reading his book. I mean, it's like, it's such, like the Fremen, you know, it's like they'll trade one guy for 300 guys, like no problem. They'll kamikaze and be like, you'll find that out in the next chapter. And so he thinks that's a reasonable exchange, is not spending enough time with his son. Well, that's a reasonable exchange for trying to awaken the world through alchemical writing, you know? And that's the hard decision he had to make, because we talk about that. Like Paul and Leto are both like aware that they have to make fucked up decisions, that it's going to hurt them. I mean, Leto didn't like acting like he was upset at Jessica. That was really hard for him. I mean, that Paul has to, like, essentially in his name have thousands, millions of people killed. Like, that's a fucking super bummer. He doesn't want to do that, but that's what he has to do. That's his purpose in life, and he can't not do what he's meant to do. And that's what Frank Herbert was. He had to do this. And, you know, it's kind of amazing what he created. But I love Stanley Kubrick, though. Stanley Kubrick was an amazing alchemical dude, and he was chill with his family. Like, he was super chill with his kids. Like, he had, like, all these animals, and, like, I don't know. I think Stanley Kubrick's really cute. He was a genius guy who worked from home and was obsessed with it, and it was, like, everything that's going on around him. But he was totally, like, super into playing with his kids and, like, putting them in his movies, and, like, it was, like, super cute. So, all right. Let's move on. Let's move on to our next question. It's getting real deep here today. Yeah.
Well, we've only done like 5 questions.
I know. This is a big, dude, this is a big fucking topic. Session 5, like, I really needed an extra week to chew on this, and I'm glad that everything worked out the way it did, because this is so much to think about, and this is what I've been excited to talk to you guys about. And guess what? This isn't the last revelation either. He hasn't even taken the water of life yet. Wait till we get to that. Like, he's got more fucking revelations. Like, and then wait till you fucking hear about Alia. Then wait till you hear about Jessica. Like, it's just like, it pops the fuck off. So it's just crazy. Like, this book's crazy. This book is crazy. It just makes me so excited. I'm just so excited about this fucking book. It's the best. It's the best. All right, let's go on to another question. I'm going to move along here. Find a better question. Okay, what's up with the Bashar of the Sardaukar. He states his orders from the Emperor are to make certain his royal cousin dies cleanly without agony. Can you elaborate on his imperial rank and on the leaders calling each other cousin again? What would this Colonel Bashar have done if he'd walked in on the Baron torturing and tormenting Duke Leto? Good question. Kevin Oliveris. All right, Kevin. So the Baron is essentially working for the Emperor. He's the Emperor's cat's paw. And as the Emperor's cat's paw, the Emperor has certain demands on him. And he says, you can't kill Leto like this. I need you to not, like he has his own rules. Because these royals, they all have these rules, okay? Like they live by these fucking laws, okay? That's like a big thing for them. And so he gives the Baron these laws. But of course the Baron can't. I mean, the Baron, if you fucking turn your back on that guy for a second, he's going to try to get some shit. He's crazy. And so he's like super greedy bitch. He's crazy. So the Sardaukar are there, like the Bashar of the Sardaukar works. He is the Emperor's eyes. So he does have like rank, even though the Baron has a bigger title than he does. This Sardaukar guy is like here to watch him. And this guy is a Sardaukar. You can't kill these guys easily. Like you're not, you can't. So yeah, that's why the Baron is beholden to this Sardaukar. And and the thing is that the Emperor like really thinks Duke Leto is fucking awesome. Like even he fucking thought that guy was fucking awesome. Like he would have loved to have him as a son-in-law and have him married into the fucking family, but shit just didn't work out and it wasn't personal and he had to do this and he didn't want him to be in pain. It wasn't personal. He didn't want Leto to be in pain. He wanted to be this is to be as painless as possible. But again, life finds a way. You can't control that sort of power, And he says that he wants his cousin to die cleanly without agony. Well, that's because all the fucking royals are related. Literally, he means that. Like, that's what they call each other because they're all fucking related. They've all been intermarrying with one another because they've all been in power for so long. Like, I think the House Carino has been in power for like a couple thousand years at this point. So, I mean, they've all married each other. So they all are fucking related. Like, they're all related. And as we see in this chapter, I mean, Paul is the Baron's own grandson. Jessica's the daughter of the Baron, I mean, it's fucking crazy. And they have no idea. It's so fucking crazy. So yeah, they're all related. And the Sardaukar, if he had walked in on the Baron torturing and tormenting the Duke, I think that the Baron could have lost his life. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if he has that rank or not, but he would have absolutely been stopped and faced the Emperor's justice, and I think the Emperor would have killed him for it. And I think that the orders to the Sardaukar were, if you see this guy fucking up, fucking kill him, like. But I don't know. I really don't know the truth of that one. Okay, so Solon Woodward asks, was there a great ethnic cleansing in the Dune universe? Where are the people of color? Well, okay, so there was a robot cleansing. That was an ethnic cleansing. But it was robots and thinking machines and computers. They had that great cleansing, the Butlerian Jihad. But the thing is we're getting ready to get, it's not an ethnic cleansing, but it's a cleansing where the Fremen are getting ready to like go over and like just, Paul is declaring war on the entire empire, taking over and making everyone his bitch, So it doesn't matter what color you are or what planet you're on, you're fucked, and that's the thing. And somebody, Kevin Oliveris says, in reply to this guy on Patreon, because this is a great place where you can like talk to one another about these questions. I think some or all of the Fremen and people in the settlements on Arrakis are supposed to be Arab-like, which is right, they're supposed to be Arab-like. And I get the impression in the prequels, however, in the 84 Dune movies, the Emperor's top general's black, and you have Lynch doing it. So it's like, Lynch doesn't give a fuck about skin color. Lynch is like David Lynch is the coolest fucking guy in the world. Like, I would love to hang out with David Lynch. He does not, he's a real artist. And so back in 1984, he was being like, in the super future, nobody would care about race. We're way past that. Like, we're so way past that. And Solon comes back and says, in the books, I noticed very little mention of race, which is a good thing. It gives the impression that it's not an issue. Frank Herbert seems to have done a pretty good job of neutralizing that issue, except there's a whole Ubermensch theme to the whole Muad'Dib thing, at least in the first book. And you're right, Solon. He doesn't really describe people ever that I can remember. Not to say that it never happens, but he does not talk about people's skin tones, because that is not fucking important here. We're talking about the human race. The human race. That's the only race that Frank Herbert sees. That's the only race that I see. We talk about how we have all these races. There is no other race besides the human race. Like, there are people have different types of melanin, different levels of melanin, and everyone's a fucking human being. So that's what it's about. Like in the Dune universe, like you're right, he's not going to talk about shit like that, and he makes it very vague because it's not a fucking issue and it shouldn't be. Although he does say, except the Ubermensch theme going on, Ubermensch thing was like, he's more than just an Ubermensch. People like to associate, okay, so the Ubermensch is from Nietzsche, I believe. I never took a philosophy class. I'm just a philosopher in the wild. I've never actually taken a formal class on it. So I get kind of confused. I kind of know some things. But I think it's Nietzsche, and it's like the Superman. Like that's where we get Superman is based off the Ubermensch. But this guy was a Austrian or German philosopher, and he was kicking around the time of World War II, and Hitler was a fan of his, and so people like to attach his stuff, and there's just a weird fucking time, okay? So people like to have to believe in the Ubermensch is to be Aryan and believe in Aryan stuff, and it's like, no, it's not that. It is just a guy who happened to be in that place and time came up with this idea. This is not a new concept. This is not an Aryan concept. This is a concept of a Messiah, of a Superman, of a person who is better than all of us, this is an enlightened man, a Buddha, a Jesus. Like that's what Paul is. But he's one manifested on earth, but he was created. He didn't, although I guess Jesus was created. But in a way, okay, so let's get real deep for a second. Let's get real deep in it for a second. So I've been doing some research on Jesus lately. I've been thinking about Jesus. And I grew up in the Methodist church. I went to Sunday school and church every Sunday for until I left the house, until I was 18 and went to college. And so I've done a lot of time in church. And I've sat through a lot of 8:30 services way too fucking early. Ugh, that was the main thing that made me not like church, was just getting up so early. If they had it later on in the day, I would have been way less angry towards it. But so I did that, and I did vacation Bible school. I did Wednesday night Bible studies in middle school. I've done a lot of thinking about Jesus. And he's a really interesting guy. And I think a lot of people everyone's bummed out on the Christian religion, which, yeah, you should be, because it's corrupted and stupid, and men have corrupted it, because this is any system created by men is going to be corrupted, whether it's politics or banking or religion or whatever it is, because it's man-made, and we're inherently corrupt little creatures. It's just the truth of the situation. And so, okay, so Jesus was a Messiah, just like Paul is a Messiah. Who is an Uberman who is above. And Jesus was a Kwisatz Haderach. He was, there's mentions of him. And what Kwisatz Haderach means is that in the mystical Jewish sense, is that someone who teleports. In the Bible, there are a few instances where in stories, people will suddenly be somewhere. And if it's just if you're reading it, it's just, there's no mention of them traveling. And you could skip over it and easily pass through it and not even understand that that's what's going on or think anything of it. They just got there. They just didn't talk about the middle. But that's not how they see it. That's not, they interpret it literally where, okay, they were just here and now he says he's here and there's no way he could have been there in that time. Because they'll say he got here by the sun was rising and he was there. And it's wait, that doesn't make any sense. There's no way he could get there that fast. So there's these instances within the Bible where people teleport somewhere really, really fast. And so that's what Kwisatz Haderaching is. And Jesus did this. There was a time, I'm trying to remember the parable where it happened. I think it's when he walks on the water and then he saves one of his disciples that or this disciple kind of tried to walk after him and fell in or something. And then the boat gets somewhere really fast and he takes them somewhere. And so it's Jesus can transcend time and space. And so that makes him Kwisatz Haderach. Paul is able to transcend time and space. But it's his mind is. It's not, he literally does it, it's his mind. It's Paul's mind. And so, Jesus is said that he's a king of the Jews. And we all know that why we have Christianity is because everything used to be Judaism, and then Jesus came, and then there's this big fracture where there's people who accepted him as the Messiah, and they turned into Christians, and then the people who didn't accept Jesus as a Messiah, and those are now the Jews. And so That's the difference between Christianity and Judaism, because they all spring from they're an Abrahamic religion. They all come from Abraham, the same story. Same with Islam. Islam is also an Abrahamic religion. There's 3 prongs on this Abrahamic religion thing. Well, no, that's the whole thing. It's fine. I mean, it's a philosophical concept. Like, I don't know if Jesus was a real thing or not, but he's an idea. He's very much in the idea sphere, so we're talking about him as an idea. And so, okay. So I was thinking, well, so the Jews didn't accept Jesus as their Messiah. Why wouldn't they do that? You know? And it's because, and this is what I was reading in the Kabbalah book, that at the time when Jesus would have been actually alive, if he was a real person, which I don't know if he was or not, but he is an idea, the Jewish people were ripe to be led by a leader who was going to have them help take over Rome and like fuck shit up and then crown himself emperor of Rome, you know, and like take over. Like that's what their Messiah, like what they wanted their Messiah to do, is to like take over these fucking Romans because they could, and like they just needed this guy, and he was their guy. And because he didn't do that and chose not to, and chose instead to be crucified and to turn the other cheek and all these things, they rejected him. And that's why there's a rejection there. And so Paul is kind of like if Jesus came and the Jews were ready, and the Fremen are like the Jews, and they're like, dude, we're so ready to like take this fucking empire. Like we've been, because the Jews were exiled and exiled and exiled, and so were the Fremen. Like the Fremen have been exiled. They live in these terrible conditions. So now only the strongest have survived, you know, because they've just been like booted out from place to place to place. And so Paul comes, and instead of not taking humanity forward and doing this jihad holy war and leading this, like Jesus chose not to, he chooses to. And this plays out what would have happened if Jesus had led the Jews in rebellion and revolt against Rome. So that's another thing that Frank Herbert is thinking about when he's writing this. And it's like, what?
So summarize that as this is a scenario.
So this is what? This is a scenario that Frank Herbert is playing out. And essentially, like, and that would make Paul an antichrist, I mean, in a way, because I mean, you're not supposed to lead the rebellion, you know, like, because the rebellion is like harsh, it's real harsh, and it's a faster way up the mountain. And that's the thing, it's like he's waking up humanity, maturing humanity much faster than it wants to be matured. It's like if you're okay, think about this. If you're waking up, right, and you're like, you want to be woken up like by someone who like comes in bed with you and like says, hey, it's time to wake up, and gently touches you and like, you know, gets in bed with you and snoozles you a little bit, and it's like, wake up, it's time. Like everyone wants to be slowly woken up, and then you can lay in bed for an hour and then get up. It's like that's what every one of us, I mean, should want. I don't know, that's what I want. Like it's like you just want that nice slow wake up. With Paul, the sleeper has awoken, okay, and like he's woke now, and so now he's like, wake up to the rest of the empire, but he has to yell at them. Like, it's not this nice, slow wake up. Like, he comes in the room and, like, wakes humanity up violently, you know, and it's just, like, throws a bucket of fucking water on them, you know, just like, wake up, the house is on fire, you know, and you're like, oh, shit, you know, like, so that they can have this trauma, so that humanity can experience this trauma of this holy war, so that they can have an awakening, and so that they can, like, fucking figure it out. Like, he's had to figure it out, because as above, so below. You know, that's a Hermetic axiom where it's like if something happens on a small level, it also happens on the big level. So something that's happening to Paul, he can relate that to something that needs to happen to humanity at large. And so now he's going to lead them through that, and he sees how to do it, and it's through pain, because he had to experience pain to have an awakening. So he's got to lead them, and he's going to do it, and it's going to be really fucking violent, and it's going to really hurt, and it's not going to be that nice wake up, you know, it's going to be fucking crazy. So, all right, let me go to my next question. Harry, man, you guys like loving this or what? Are you guys into this? Is this? Oh, right. I mean, yeah. I don't see. Like, I need to get. I'm gonna be on a laptop soon where I can just see you guys doing this. We're figuring this whole Twitch thing out. So we're getting it all figured out. Let me go with some more questions here. Oh, Matthew Raymond has a great question. Is it possible that the fall of House Atreides is the direct result of Duke Leto's failure to marry Jessica? The marriage may have put the Duke in a politically weaker position, but the Emperor may have felt less threatened as a result, and he may have never set the trap for Atreides on Arrakis. That's a good point. I never thought about that, Matthew. You're super right. Maybe if Leto had made himself less dangerous, the wise remain hidden, and married Jessica, and so that would put him in a lesser position of power. That may have, yeah, that absolutely, you're right. Maybe, totally. I think that's a completely possible scenario. I think it's really interesting that you thought about it like that. And and we find out that Duke Leto's like, he says his only regret was not marrying you. Like he makes sure that Paul tells her that. Like he makes sure of that. And I think as he's dying, like when Leto, like right before he decides to take the poison gas tooth, he has this memory of just this mundane memory of Paul just laughing at an antenna kite. It's so like it's just a dumb memory, but that memory just like means so much. It's like these dumb, mundane moments that you don't even plan for, are just so beautiful. Like that's the last thing you think of. And wait, where was I? What were we talking about? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. I was like getting really caught up in Duke Leto's death. It was like making me really sad.
Just go there.
But yeah, you're right. If he had married Jessica, they could have continued to stay on Caladan and have those happy memories. But if he had married Jessica, then Paul wouldn't become the Kwisatz Haderach. I mean, so I don't know. It's it would have been the more chill way. That's for sure. All right, moving on to our next question. Stephanie Papas asks, do you think it's regressive of Frank to have put hyper-competent women in servile positions? Why wouldn't the most powerful and enlightened and most knowledgeable people want to lead humanity to a better future? I personally think it's because they want humanity to still have free will, but as we see later in the books, when free will is taken away, humanity actually experiences a peace that lasts for a very long time. So if free will equals death and horror, and no freedom equals prosperity and peace, isn't that the better option? What is it the Bene Gesserit really see in free will, I guess, is my question. Hold on, let me think. Let me meditate. Let me chew on this for a second, Stephanie. T, you have something you want
to? I think maybe you should skip that question and answer it later.
Well, I think
that's a loaded question.
Well, okay, how about
I decode that one.
Dune music came on.
Our Dune music came on. Hold on. We're getting it fixed.
How did the music come on?
That's good. It'll give me a minute to think about this.
Oh, no, wait. Never mind. It's gone.
Okay. All right.
I think it was the Facebook one. The Facebook one is like up and down.
Okay. So, for your first question, is it regressive to have hyper-competent women in servile positions? No, because they're pretending. I mean, they serve, but they're really, by saying like, I'm just a servile position, people like they can manipulate from that position. If they came in and tried to take over, like that's not going to work. Like they have to. They're like wolves in sheep's clothing is what they are a little bit. But also they embody the feminine principle of yin, which is not naked power. That's a yang principle. That's a male principle, to have aggression and like lead a war. Like that's something a man would do. And that's something that Paul has to do. Like a Paul Bene Gesserit has to lead a fucking holy war. A female Bene Gesserit, that's not the deal. That's not how they rule. They rule through indirect means. And so they absolutely already do rule. They just do it through indirect methods, which is more chill, which is way more chill than what Paul's been doing, like so much more chill. And they also do respect, well, I mean, they do respect free will to a degree. I mean, when they don't respect free will, then that's when they fuck up. And that's the lesson that the Bene Gesserit kind of have to learn, is because by manifesting this man, they're like not respecting kind of the free will of, they're creating this God man on earth to help lead humanity much faster than it should be led. And that's going to be really painful for everyone, including the Bene Gesserit. They cannot control that. Like the chaos will also touch them in ways that they will never recover from. I mean, like, everyone will change. Everyone. The guild is going to change. The Imperium is going to change. The Arrakis, like, the planet Arrakis itself is going to change. Everything is going to change once Paul takes over. So, you know, yeah. All right, moving on. Benjamin Michalko asks, was Paul's enlightenment directly tied to the death of his father, as if he wouldn't have been able to fully ascend while his father was still alive? The chapter intro quotes make me think this to be the case. There should be a science of discontent. People need hard times and oppression to develop psychic muscles. And Arrakis teaches the attitude of the knife, chopping off what's incomplete and saying, now it's complete because it's ended here. And that's kind of like, it's a Freudian concept. I've been thinking about him and his father, like, his father dies and then he becomes aware. And there's this Freudian concept that, and again, Frank Herbert totally knew about Freud, totally knew about Carl Jung. And there's a thing he says where you have to kill your father. For you to be a man, your father has to die. And that's something that Jodorowsky loves in the Metabarons. That's something that he really explores. Like, literally, is the Metabaron has to kill his father before he can ascend to the Metabaron. But it's a concept, like, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean physical death. It can mean, like, your father dies philosophically in your mind as, like, this protector, and you have to become the protector. You can't let somebody else be the responsible one. You have to take the responsibility. And you have to see them for the humans and their failings that our fathers do have. When we're kids, we think they're superheroes, but, you know, as you grow older, you find out they're human beings, and, like, they have fucked up in certain ways, and you're just like, oh, but you have to find compassion for that, and then you have to become responsible and try to do better than he did, you know. And we all have to try to do better than our parents. That's I think all of our job in life is to try to do a little bit better than our parents did, and then we have kids, and then they try to do a little bit better than we did, you know. Like, it's a cycle. But it's very symbolic that Leto dies. I mean, he does need the pain of his father's death to trigger him, you know, like, that is because he loves his father so much. And I mean, he wants to be his father's son. He has so much respect for his dad. Like, he's so in awe of him. And to have him die like this is just, I mean, that would be so traumatic. That would be so traumatic. And he needed a trauma that hardcore to wake up, you know. And that happens a lot throughout the novels. You know, we're talking about the Bene Gesserit. They have to have the spice agony to wake up. Also, Golas. That comes in later. That comes in the next book. If we go on to Dune Messiah, we have Duncan Idaho returns as a Gola. And a Gola is a clone. You know, they took some cells and they just recloned this guy. But the thing is, the Leilaxu come in. The Leilaxu clone people. They're like the male. They're not Bene Gesserit, but they're similar. Like, they're more like the Bene Gesserit than, say, the Spacing Guild would be, or the Mentats would be. Like, I would compare the Leilaxu as more the twisted Bene Gesserit, who are just, like, even more fucked up, you know? Like, they're, like, everyone thinks the Bene Gesserit's methods are kind of fucked up, and they are. They're very Machiavellian, you know? They're very, very Machiavellian. But not as compared to, like, the Leilaxu. And the Leilaxu are an all-male society. Like, they're the all-males. They don't have female. Well, they do, you find out, but it's a whole fucking thing. It's, like, super nuts. But to wake up a Gola to its latent memories, you have to also give it a severe psychological trauma. You have to cause some cognitive dissonance to, like, get them to wake up. And also Miles Tegg later on, he, like, ascends to an even higher fucking level of shit. And he is through this T-probe pain that he feels. These honored matre whores from outside of the Imperium come in. They're causing a lot of trouble for the Bene Gesserit. And so their Bashar the Bene Gesserit Bashar gets caught, and they're trying to probe his brain with this pain fucking thing. And, like, all the pain that he experiences just, like, awakens him into this new fucking state of being that's, like, even crazier. I mean, like, the awakenings that happen in these books, these characters just keep getting fucking crazier. So, yeah. All right, moving on. Anton Nystrom asks, not sure if I misunderstood since English is my second language. In the desert, Paul mentions that they can't leave Arrakis since they are now addicted to the spice. Wouldn't they know about spice being addictive beforehand, so why even consume it? And if they are addicted to spice, wouldn't they just be able to import it from Arrakis anyways? And did the spice contribute to Paul's awakening? I may have misunderstood this whole part, so I would be happy to get some clarity on this. All right, Anton, let's talk about the spice for a minute. Great question. Great question. the spice absolutely did contribute to Paul's awakening. Without it, it primed his fuse. You know, he has this fuse. He is a fuse. He is a bomb, but the spice kind of primed him, and then the pain that we were just talking about ignited him. So the spice, you have to be primed before you can ignite. And this drug is an awareness drug. And for most people, when they take it, they're not super woke already. Like Paul's already, like, he's been trained to be woke his whole life, you know? So when he takes it, it does something to his brain that's more than, because his brain is more than other people's brains. He has a very special, highly trained brain and consciousness. Okay, he's had a lot of consciousness training. And so when he takes it, it does these, primes him for these bigger things. And
Well, he has a certain purpose, and it primes him even stronger for his purpose.
yeah, it primes him even stronger for his purpose by expanding his awareness. And I mean, and we talk about, he says that the spice is a drug, it's a poison. The soothsayer drug is a poison. The water of life, which is related to the spice, they're kind of similar. One's powdered and not quite as concentrated, and one comes directly from the worm. It's a poison. And it's funny that a truth-sayer drug, you have to take a poison to see the truth, because that's what the truth is. Facing the truth is hard, because facing the truth means seeing the ugliness as well as the positivity. You have to see the negative and the positive at the same time and not turn away from that negative. And so the truth hurts. And I mean, this is like anyone who realizes truths. Like, there's been truths that I've realized that, like, once you see, you cannot unsee it. You know, like once you, and this is a really good analogy. So I wasn't always in video production. This is a relatively new gig for me. I've been doing video production now for 5 years. Before that, I was a tattoo artist. Before that, I went to art school. Like, whatever. I used to be behind the pencil. I used to be behind the tattoo machine. And now I'm both behind and in front of the camera. And so now that I make content, there are awarenesses that I see when I'm watching movies and television shows, where I see where if they didn't cut something just right, or if they don't have, their shot doesn't line up, or the 180-degree rule is broken, or like, once you know how these things are built, when you watch a movie, you will always see these things, generally speaking, unless a movie really gets you. And that's when you know you're watching good movies, when you forget all that, when they get you to forget about all that because you're so invested in the story. But it's like the mentat awareness, you know, it's like once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee these patterns. And so, so that's what this spice kind of helps him to do, you know, is to like grow. And I don't know how many of you guys have tried psychedelic drugs, but those are awareness drugs. And Frank Herbert was absolutely has used mushrooms 100%. Like, he has used these drugs. And that's part of why he's writing about the spice melange, because I've had experiences with a few different psychedelic drugs, and they absolutely have expanded my awareness. I absolutely have had these huge awarenesses, and they've like blown my life apart. And it's just been like, holy shit. Because it helps you to see a different perspective on things, see a higher perspective on things that you normally can't see because you're so in it all the time and you can't see the forest for the trees. So that's what this drug kind of does to Paul. And
not to say that that's what it will do to other people.
Well, yeah. Well, again, the spice drug, what it does for Paul is because Paul's brain is primed for that.
Purpose.
It's primed for that purpose, to see and have these bigger awarenesses. His mind is trained to have larger awarenesses. So when he comes in contact with this, it absolutely ignites that in him. Most people's brains are not trained to have these larger awarenesses. There's a lot of people's brains who are not trained to have these awarenesses. And it's
be careful with recommending drugs to people.
Well, I'm not saying everyone should go out and do psychedelic drugs. I'm not saying that.
Because their purpose is not.
But I'm saying from my personal experience, I have a very positive personal experience, but it was a painful experience too. Like, I had a great awakening when I was like really upset and I had to face some shit. I had some demons I had to face. And I did, and I was like really sick too. I was like sick and I just felt horrible, and I was just like had to face some truth. I had some truth I didn't want to face that I had to face. And so one night I dropped half a tab of acid, and I figured out some shit that night. Like, I got it kick-started. I felt so much better the next day. I mean, I was just like, okay, I get it. Like, all right. Like, and I was so upset. And in that moment, I needed something to help me figure it out, because I knew I was just missing it because I was so clouded with emotion. And this experience I got to detach from my emotion in a lot of ways, see it for what it is, see myself from a higher perspective, and understand like these rules that I'm operating in are an illusion. Like I don't have to do that. Like I can do whatever I want. Like it's like crazy. So yeah, it can be a really positive experience, but also be warned that if you do try psychedelic drugs, it will make you face things that you're not facing. Absolutely. That's why a lot of people get like don't like smoking weed, is it makes them like, oh, I get paranoid. I get nervous, you know, and I think it's because there's something in them that they don't want to face. And so when you smoke weed, it like gets you to start thinking about those things because you have to get past those things to look at the greater awarenesses. You have to get past your fears to see things from a higher perspective.
That's why so much of our society is against marijuana.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I do think that that's why, you know, marijuana is like, oh no, you know, we have this big stigma. Let me be really real with you about it. Like, I am a stoner chick, and I smoke way more weed than I do drink. Everyone thinks I'm an alcoholic. No, I haven't even had a drink in months at this point. Well, I had one at that wedding, but I get frustrated when people are like, oh, smoking weed, oh, like that's so terrible. And it's like, it's just like getting drunk. I mean, you're just,
Oh, getting drunk is worse.
well, getting drunk is worse. It is worse, but it's like you're loosening up, you know, and it's like, I like to loosen up my mind. And most people are more body centered. And I think that alcohol works on your body. It works on your emotions, you know, and that's where most people are. Like I'm more cerebral. I'm more, in my mind a lot. I'm very like all about my intellect, and so I like weed because it loosens up my intellect, whereas alcohol loosens up my emotions. You know, and I already got enough emotions. I don't need that. I just need to think about things a little differently. And the thing that I like about weed is that I think about things that I want to think about when I'm on it. Like I'm past that point of looking at horrible truths, and now I can just be like, oh, forget all the bullshit that I don't need to be worrying about. Like shit that I worry about for no reason that stops me from thinking about things that are more interesting and higher minded and more higher vibrational. So it helped, and I will fucking tell you, when I was writing this session, I absolutely had to take a fucking hit off of my joint. My tolerance is really low. I've been really like refining it because I don't want to smoke weed all the time. And I just had to take one drag and like, fuck, I'm there. And so I had to smoke some to think about Paul's awakening. I couldn't do it sober. There's just no way. I was like, I gotta figure this out. Like, and it helped me. So, yeah. Enough about drugs, kids. I just can't do that like drugs are bad thing. I just can't, because they're bad and they're good. They're bad and they're good. Just like everything in life. Like you can use it like an asshole and ruin your life with them, or you can use it in a positive fucking way that helps you. You know? Yeah. Yeah, you can use them positively or negatively. You just have to be a fucking adult about it and like handle your shit, you know? And if you are gonna like go on some crazy trip, be somewhere where it's okay to be on a crazy trip, you know? Like go somewhere where it's fine. Or not, you know what, fuck it. Just sometimes you do have to go out in public and get fucked up. I go to museums on mushrooms, I've done it, it's great. So, God, these paintings, like you look at these paintings when you're on mushrooms and you're like, fuck, like I just like die. It's like insane. Okay, moving on. I'm just like psychedelics best saleswoman right now, you know.
Use it responsibly.
Well, Forrest Kim Minnelli asked, do you think it's an appropriate reflection to say that the future Dune proposes is one where people don't rely on technology for progress evolution, but instead on drugs? In our timeline, humans have put all of our eggs in the technology basket, but in Dune, it seems like everyone puts theirs into drugs. Do you think that's a better solution for human evolution? Is it a mix or of the two more, or is a mix of the two more healthy? And that is absolutely what's going on. Because there is no technology, people have to rely on themselves. Okay, humanity has to rely on itself. And so humanity has to augment itself. Like just like if you want to, like overclocking your computer, is that a thing? What's the thing? Like overclocking, where you can heighten this thing. You can't do it all the time. But you can do it and like get some juice, you know, and that's kind of like what
you're gonna shorten the life of your components by doing it.
But there's a price to pay for it. There's a price to pay for overclocking your computer. Like there absolutely is a price to pay and that's what the spice teaches you is that you become addicted to it. You can't get off of it. It's fucked up like that. You know, you'll die without it. But that it will give you something in return, and that's what all drugs do is they give you something in return, but there is a price to pay, and you can't act like there's not a price to pay. And that's what I like about Dune is that, yes, people are relying on drugs. You have the juice of safu that the Mentats use. You've got the spice melange going on. You've got samuta. You got varit. So you have like regular, just fun time drugs that people use, just for pleasure. You have, oh yeah, and then the Bene Gesserit, or actually Duke Leto and the Mentat are constantly taking energy pills. They're taking fucking uppers. They're taking like uppers essentially to stay awake. There's like, oh, give Paul a sleep shot. You know, they're taking sedatives. Like, they're very much like using chemicals to control their bodies because their bodies are what they have to rely on. They don't have technology. But I do think that, I mean, right now, I think we rely too much on technology, but I think that technology is also super awesome. We have to have it right now. Like, it's before, you have to have it, create it before you can move past it. And so we're creating it right now. But just like Black Mirror, I think Black Mirror is really great because it talks about technology, how technology is evolving faster than we are. And that's the fucking problem. We need to evolve ourselves a little bit more if we're going to keep up with our fucking technology, or else it will enslave us. It absolutely will. And
also, we're just reaching a stage where people are only starting to realize that technology could be a problem.
yeah, we are
It's still just a baby thing.
Yeah, we are just now reaching the stage where technology, we're realizing what a problem it could be. We're just, instead of just being like, oh wow, gee, I want to push a button and have my whole house clean. It's like, we're past that. We're like seeing like, okay, so if we do have, say we put in roads where everybody is in car, like everything's an Uber. You don't have your own car anymore. And everything's automated. You have these driverless cars and they go around everywhere and they pick you up and whatever. Well, like, that sounds awesome. Like, oh, wow, what a cool thing. But then I always think of the dark side of it, where it's like, okay, well, what if somebody got control and hacked into that shit and just caused all these accidents and, like, fucked all that shit up, or, like, caused complete, like, gridlock? Like, you would have such a control over traffic that if someone took control of that control, they could fuck everything up. And that's not necessarily, like, there is a safety in chaos, you know, where, like, there's going to be some fuck ups here and there, but it's not one person, I don't know. It's a whole thing. So
There are better examples of that.
I know there are better examples than that, but I'm tired and I haven't had a lot of sleep. So I'm trying my best here, guys. I'm trying my best. Let me take a sip of water. Think about it. But yeah, it is a mix though. I mean, we need to evolve ourselves, and that's the thing. Okay. For us right now in this moment, it is absolutely, we have technology. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to continue. We're going to have AI at some point. That's really scary. Elon Musk is really scared of that shit. I know it's going to happen, and I just hope that when it does, that we're chill to the AI and not fucking assholes to it so it decides to kill us, because I think if we're friends to it like Data on Star Trek, then it can be fine. But we're not evolved enough to be cool like that is the problem. And that we're going to be an asshole to this AI, and then the AI will try to fuck our shit up. You know, I could totally see that happening. That's absolutely a possible future scenario.
Yeah, like we're more the problem than the actual AI.
Yeah, we're the problem. Like, we're the assholes. And that's the thing about humanity, is like humanity needs to realize that we're the assholes. It's like, it's not that other group over there or that country over there or that, we're all the assholes, all of us. Everyone on the planet. We're the assholes. It's not it's like in the end of The Burbs. You know, where he's freaking out and he's like, it's not them, Art, it's us. And Tom Hanks is freaking. I don't know. You guys should watch The Burbs. It's like so perfect. Like, but then it was them. It was it's fucking crazy. Anyways, yeah, technology. We need to evolve ourselves to keep up with it. Okay, so John Gunther asks, during Paul's awakening, he considers the path of becoming a guildsman and recognizes his own strangeness, that this is even a possible future for him. I have another kind of sight. I see another kind of terrain, the available paths. I'm not sure I fully understand the distinction between Paul's available paths and how it differs from the guild's possible paths. When you are piloting guild liners, can you go into this more depth? Yes. Let's talk about the guild. Okay, so how the guild runs their spacing monopoly is with guild navigators and these things called holesman fields. But we'll just talk about the guild navigators. Guild navigators are humans who have been mutated by taking spice. I don't know in exactly what form. I know that they live in some spice cloud, like they're like breathing it or something. Like they're taking spice in a whole other way. You know, the Bene Gesserit take it. Because the Bene Gesserit take the water of life and then like they take just like spice melange. Whereas these guys are like in spice clouds and shit, okay? So they mutate into these fish-like creatures. Like, they don't look human anymore, and they like kind of float around, like they kind of swim around in this gas or something. It's like super nuts. And so when the guild folds
Yeah,
space
lost
and time,
speed. Oh, never mind, now
um,
come back.
so these guys have been mutated to become prescient. They can see all these future timelines, but they can see forward through the universe. And so when they fold space and time, when the guild folds space and time in the Highliners, what the guild navigator does is the guild navigator is like sees through space, not through time necessarily. They see through space. They don't see through time, and they navigate the best possible way through this moment of being folded to where they come out on the other side and they're not all dead. So that's kind of the deal. It's still really fucking vague and mysterious. I don't exactly know if I'm explaining this 100% in a way that everyone can follow, but that's how they do that. And so Paul is prescient. Paul sees through time and space. You know, I mean, he sees through a lot of shit. And so he sees that he absolutely could get in with the guild if he wanted to, and they would take him in, because he has to look at all of his options. He can stay on Arrakis and ally himself with the Fremen people and take over the Imperium, or one of the things he could do is go join the guild. And the guild would absolutely love to have him over there. Like, they would absolutely be like, please, Paul Atreides, with your crazy fucking knowledge of the future, come work for us. Like, we will give you all the spice you need. You will never have to want for anything. He totally could have gone that route. But he's like, no, that's not the way. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to take the easy way out with these fucking guild motherfuckers. I'm here to be a goddamn seed bomb motherfucker to bring chaos into this Imperium. So, next question. Hey, CBG19. Dune is my favorite book, and I'm so happy that you're doing this book club. Well, thanks, Marie. Me too. As we talk about the jihad, Paul anticipates being carried out in his name. As we talk about the jihad that Paul anticipates being carried out in his name, I'm left wondering this. What will be the guild's response to this holy war? How is it Paul's warriors get off planet? Can't the guild shut it down? The guild, Marie, is dependent upon spice. Those guild navigators have to have spice. Paul has all the fucking spice. I mean, like, Paul has, they have their own spice stores. Not to say they don't have a bunch of spice in some fucking vault somewhere. But Paul has them by the balls. I mean, they can't do anything because he controls the spice. He controls the fucking universe. Everything runs on spice. The Bene Gesserit run on spice. The fucking guild runs on spice. Like, it's like he's just taken over Amazon. I mean, it's like they have to do whatever he says. And so, yeah, they could try to shut it down. But in the long run, they know they can't. In the short run, they probably could. But in the long run, they can't win the war. They might be able to win a battle, but they will not be able to win a war. So that's why they have to submit to Paul. Like, everyone just has to bend over for Paul. Every fucking one of them has to bend over for Paul. It's so sick. It's like, I don't know. It's just crazy amounts of power that he gets. Magnus D. Magnus says, hey, team, I just signed up to Patreon for this question. Oh, well, hey, good. Let's get this. Let's do it. I hope everyone is okay, and last week wasn't a serious emergency. Everyone's okay. We're good. We got through it. Thank you for asking. Hey, could you please post some warning on your YouTube channel if we're skipping any more sessions? I'm in Australia and it's 6 a.m. for me. Okay. And I was like, okay, that's why I need you guys on Patreon. Because if you're on Patreon, I can like say it on there, and then because it's like so hard. I try to put it on Twitch, or I put it on Twitter. I put it on Instagram. I don't think I put it on Facebook. I don't know if it got on Facebook. There's just so many different platforms. And so if we just get everybody in the same fucking platform.
The problem is there's no good way to notify people about anything.
Yeah.
People miss it no matter what, or they misconstrue it and they get upset.
Yeah, there's no way to get everybody. There's no way to get everybody. And that's why I think that if you become a Team 19 member for like $1, you'll know everything, because that's where we put everything that you need to know.
Right.
Like, you're in the know now. Like, if you're a Team 19 member, then you are in the know now. So welcome aboard. Now you don't have to worry about it, because it'll be on here on Patreon. That's where you'll find out if we're going to skip any more sessions. Although next week we're going to continue on with Section 6. Everything's chill.
You don't have to get Patreon to find out.
Well, I'm still going to post to other places, but I'm saying, like, Patreon is the place where I absolutely will post these things.
We post everything we can on everything.
Yeah.
But people still miss information.
All right. So his question is, on page 314, Jessica takes mental solace from the OC Bible, a time to keep and a time to cast away. But just 2 pages earlier on 312, she talks about how the manipulator of religion seeded Arrakis with messianic prophecies. I can't reconcile how she can be so pious and yet know all about the behind-the-curtain exploitive nature of religion. Also, Mercury in retrograde is some raw mauvaise. Mauvaise foi. I don't know what mauvaise foi is, although I did take French. Okay, so, all right, let's talk about this. So Jessica takes solace in a passage from the OC Bible, but is aware as a Bene Gesserit of how to manipulate religions and how prophecies are seeded. And the thing about it is that you can absolutely reconcile these two things. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Just because you understand how people can manipulate religion in the real world doesn't mean that philosophy isn't something that you can't appreciate. Philosophy is philosophy. No matter how you manipulate people with it, it still holds truth within it. And so the OC Bible is like I was talking about earlier, it is a book where all of the philosophies of all the major religions have been distilled down into the root components, and their golden rule is thou shalt not disfigure the soul. I mean, that's the main purpose of every religion, and why people join them is because they don't want to be bad. Like, people don't want to be bad. We know we're assholes, but we don't want to be. And we need these rules. Like, we need to impose these rules on ourselves, so we can try to be better people. Because humanity really does want to be better. And so she sees the beauty in these philosophies in this book. This is a philosophical treatise, this book. So you can still appreciate philosophy and understand also at the same time that man and womankind can manipulate religion. Like that's not, I don't think that's a stretch. All right, Vicky, we're going to go to a couple of questions from Twitch.
Do you have your airdrop on?
I do have my airdrop on. We're going to go to some Twitch questions now. I'm getting some airdrops. Thank you to all my Team 19 members for your questions. Awesome questions today, guys. If you would like to have your questions prioritized, you should become a Team 19 member for next week. Well, look, man, this is such a burden. Like, I've been trying to fix Patreon for so long, man. It's like, I know I'm selling it, but it's really a fucking cool thing, and you get access to me. Like when we're on YouTube, like, we can't make awesome fucking badass YouTube videos and pump them out, like, every week. It's the triangle, Like, Tyson put so much time and effort in these videos, in the Sailor Moon video that's getting ready to come out. Like, so much effort, and it's a Herculean task to make this, and that's why it's so good, is because we put a lot of ourselves and we work really hard on these things, so it takes a little bit of time. And I recognize that it takes, a lot of you want to communicate with me in between those times. You want more access to me. And so with Patreon, becoming a Team 19 member, that's where you get more access to me, where I post videos that I record on my phone that isn't the super polished, amazing, like, crowning achievement, that we do on YouTube. It's a lot more cash, but it's very real, it's very raw, it's very me. And so if you want to just hang out and just see what I'm saying and you don't care about production value, then come on Patreon and become a Team 19 member if you need more. But if you're happy with just getting the videos every few weeks, then stay there. That's fine. It's just more access. That's what it is. I figured out the game, Okay. So we got a lot of questions from Twitch. Oh, this is a good one. Arrakis Arachnid. That's good. Arachnus Arachnid. That's good. Do you attach any symbolism to Paul's undergoing his great awakening at the same time as Arrakis is burying their Stilton, forcing them to dig their way out, like he had undergone a second gestation inside Dune's womb, only to be rebirthed? Fuck yeah. I wasn't thinking about that, and you totally caught that one, and you're so fucking right. Like, that's exactly what happened. Paul has his awakening. There's a storm while they're hiding out, while he's dealing with all this stuff for the first time, while he's grieving his father, while he's becoming whatever the fuck he is. And they're being buried in the sand of Arrakis, and they are in this womb, but he's in a womb, like with his mom this time too, and they're both birthed out at the same time. And that also shows like how Jessica has like come down a notch. Like, she used to be his mom, but now she's just kind of like follows, like, he's the one who's in charge. Like, he's he's daddy now. You know, like he's the one who's in charge. But yeah, when he has to dig them out of there with the little kit and everything, that's absolutely a second birth. So good looking out. That's totally sick. You're so right. Super right. Okay. Kev Pimp 5 says, seems like they were making the Harkonnens gay to make them seem more evil. In the prequels, Xavier Harkonnen was an awesome hero and framed to look bad. I haven't read the prequels. I have heard about Xavier Harkonnen and that he took some hit. He took like a Slytherin. He was like Snape. He was like Severus Snape. He took a hit for the team and everyone thinks he's this asshole, but really he fucking saved the goddamn day. Which would be awesome. I think that's a really cool idea and I'm into that. But the Baron is a pedophile not because it's like that's a bad, like, well, it is a bad thing, but not because, it's because he's a decadent. He's a decadent, you know, like he's greedy. He's like, that's pedophile, like wanting to rape your grandson's the worst. Like, it's like the worst. It's like, that's such capital weird stuff. And it's a symbol of decadence. It's not something to say against LGBTQ people. Like, so you have to divorce, like detach those two things. Like, don't think of it like that. Just think of it as a symbol of the Baron's decadence, because that's what he's supposed to be. You know, he's got all those rings. Oh my god, I love that he fucking didn't get the ring. I would have wanted the ring too, though. If I was Baron Harkonnen, because I like rings, and if I'm gonna defeat my fucking dude, defeat my enemy, to have his ring and wear it around and go to parties and you're like, oh, how's it going? You know, you're like showing off your hands so people see your fucking like Duke Atreides ring. Like, he's such a mean girl. Like, think of the Baron kind of as this fucked up Regina George mean girl. You know, that's, I don't know. I kind of think of him like that. This was super weird. Liswick asks, why do you think Jessica wasn't really punished by the Bene Gesserit for having Paul? And they can't touch her right now, but they will try to punish her. Don't you worry about that. Like, but the thing is that they are not in a position right now to punish her. And the Bene Gesserit punishment, they don't want you to know when it's coming. They want you to, like, they want it to hit you and just ruin your fucking life. Bene Gesserit punishment is, like, the worst. And so they're just biding their time right now. But the thing is that, you know, when your son becomes the emperor of the known universe, well, then she's even more untouchable. And that Bene Gesserit can never really visit that upon her. But in the end, she does kind of rejoin their ranks. Like, she may have disobeyed that one order, but she's kind of vindicated by it and just kind of, they're chill. Like, her and the Bene Gesserit are chill later. Momo and Vivi. Teacher. I think about fucking Space Brain. Teacher. Could we sweet talk you into doing a poster print of your Bene Gesserit cosplay? Abso-fucking-lutely, girlfriend. We are working on that over here. We're not gonna have it done, like, it may be like a month or so. Like, we got a lot of shit that we're still doing. So we gotta get the Sailor Moon thing done, and then I can kind of look at that sort of stuff. But that's absolutely something that's in the works, and it's going to be around. And in fact, okay, tell me what you guys think about this idea. Let me pitch you.
No.
Yes. So
Are
not
you ready?
no. So not only do you get a cool poster, and it's gonna have the Bene Gesserit costume on it. It's gonna say the Litany of Fear on it. But you're gonna get a wallet card that also has the Litany of Fear on it, so that you can keep it in your wallet. So that if you're ever like out and about and some shit is going down and like you need some shit, you can just look in your wallet and read it and feel better. So I think that I want to add that in there. So if you get one, you get this little cute note card.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the illustration thing.
Oh, no.
That's why I'm not getting done.
Yeah, no. I mean, we're trying to get an illustrated and get a really cool illustrated poster, but that's like, that's extra. That's like, it's going to take us a minute to figure all this out. But we're going to have something, and it's going to be fucking awesome. So, but it might be in like a month. But thank you, Momo and Vivi, for the question. Really appreciate it. I'm glad you like my cosplay. I do too. Me and Vicky, we really killed it. We went out and we found all that stuff downtown.
The photo was amazing.
The photo was so good. Tyson, you take such an amazing photo.
Thank you.
Tyson took the photo, by the way. Everyone. It was so good. He got this new filter, this black satin filter that he put on the lens, and it just made the whole thing look so good. Like, it just really made it. Tyson knows what he's doing. Thanks for taking an amazing picture, T. Thank you, Vicky, for being there to help me put together this amazing costume. This was a really great team effort. I'm really proud of
I
us.
think the photo's ready just as it is.
Well, yeah, we might just do the photo and not get an illustration. We're still deciding. Wait, that's what I'm saying. We're still deciding. I have like so many decisions in my life I have to make that this is like a lower priority decision. So I have to deal with these other things before I can kind of deal with that thing.
Everyone seems on board for the wallet card, and the best reply is, "I'd buy that for $1."
I'd buy that for $1. Yeah, fuck yeah, you would. um, Arnaldo Fain says the future's so bright I gotta wear shades, which I absolutely thought about that lyric when I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna wear my shades today because I'd rather look like a crazy person than a tired person. So that's hilarious. And Cornelius J asks, CB girl, hey mother, love ya. Love you too. Love you too, BB. Do you think Herbert was making any claims about homosexuality in the book? It seems that any time it's depicted is in perversion. I know the books weren't written in 2017, but still. And he's, again, like, he's not using this as a thing to talk about in terms of what's right and wrong, like, oh, all homosexuality is wrong. He's not saying that. What he's saying is that the Baron, he's using it because the Baron is a symbol. And so in the whole books of, like, in all of Dune, like, the whole thing is about procreation. All of Dune is about procreation. You have Leto, who has sex with Jessica, who creates Paul. Paul creates Leto and Ganima. You know, Leto has these bloodlines going for many years that create Siona, and then they have Siona and Duncan, and they mix together, and they create some new shit. And then later on, you have Odrade, who's like a far in the future Atreides, and Miles Tegg. And then they, you know, it's like, and then she's had a daughter, and then it's like, there's like, everybody fucks and has kids, and then those fucking kids like go on. It's like, it's all of Dune is about procreation. It's like all of, and like that's what Paul's here to do. There's stagnation in the Empire and the gene pool. He's here to shake up the gene pool because people, like, he needs all these different people fucking, okay? Like, literally, that's what's happening. That's why I talk about World War II, like, the baby boomers, you know? He's, like, trying to make a new crop. And so, if you think about the Baron being a pedophile, like, there's no procreation going on there. Like, there's nothing, like, he doesn't produce children. Like, he only has sex for pleasure. He does not have sex to procreate and to give back to the universe. And that's a decadent ideal. That's a greedy thing to do, is to only do something for pleasure and not for the betterment of humankind. And so that's what he's trying to say with his pedophilia, okay? And the only time that he had sex with a woman was with Bene Gesserit, and that created Jessica. But he allowed himself to be seduced. He knew what was happening, but he had to make some bargain with the Bene Gesserit. And the Bene Gesserit were like, look, we'll help you with this thing or whatever, but you got to impregnate, you have to have sex with one of our girls, you know? And I know that this is in the prequel series. This isn't in the Frank Herbert novels, but in the Brian Herbert novels, we find out that it's Gaius Helen Mohim who was the one who had sex with the Baron, but the Baron stipulated that if he was going to have sex with a woman, which he never wanted to have sex with one, if he was going to be forced to have sex with a woman, he wanted to make it a rape scenario where it was painful for her and that it was a rape and that it sucked. You know, like, he did not want to do this, and so he made sure that it was sucky. But what she made sure to do is to give him an STD, some mystical Bene Gesserit STD that makes him fat and ugly, because he was beautiful. He used to look like Fade Rautha. He used to be gorgeous. And he was a gorgeous royal dude who was like, could have any guy in the Empire that he wanted, you know, like, what a fucking cake life. But because of this, he ends up becoming a fat, ugly piece of shit. And so now he's just this fat, gross guy. So, and it's all because of that one encounter. So I think that that's interesting. I will say that that's interesting Brian Herbert stuff that I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. But so now you know, the more you know, like, it's not an attack on LGBT whatever thing. It's just about how that concept, because the Baron is a symbol of decadence. All right, I think I've been trying to answer this question for a while in my head.
Well, people are just really caught up on this topic right now.
Yeah, people are very triggered by race. People are very triggered by homophobia and everything else that's going on, and misogyny. You know, we're all very triggered. Well, everyone's triggered by everything, whatever you're triggered by, and these are all some of the different things that people get all excited about. You know, because I think that there is awakening going on right now, and people are becoming aware that these things are still a problem within our society, and people are frustrated that these things are still a problem in our society, and I get it. I mean, I am too. But at the same time, you have to accept that we're all assholes, and then once we stop saying it's that group, that group's the problem, and start looking at ourselves and just trying to make ourselves better people instead of trying to fix other people, then, you know, we're going to keep getting into fights. Like, that's why we're getting in all these fights right now, all these protesters that are clashing because they want to fight. They don't want to fuck. They want to fight. They don't want to work on themselves. They want to work on other people. And it's easier to externalize your hatred for, oh, it's the Nazis, fuck the Nazis, or oh, it's these, you know, liberal snowflakes or whatever the fuck, both sides. It's the same rhetoric on both sides, and it's just gonna cause a war if people don't calm the fuck down, you know. And I think that the only antidote to violence is people need to have sex and get it out, because you have that energy, this anger, this energy in you, and you gotta get it out. And I think it's better to procreate than to kill one another. But, you know, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we got to meet fucking people. Maybe we do. You know what? The race consciousness of humanity at large, maybe we do need a war. Maybe you're right, guys. You know, maybe we need it. Okay. Got real deep there.
Don't take that too seriously.
Well, I'm just throwing ideas out there. I don't know. I don't fucking know. I'm an asshole. I'm just an asshole. Just telling you what I think. Let's see here.
How come you get a cold every time you shoot?
I don't. When I'm talking so much, it creates this mucus in my throat. I don't know. It's weird. Well, yeah, I forgot. Mrs. Superconductor asks, do you think Paul only glimpsed the Doth sphere of the Kabbalah, which we talked about in that video, that bonus video, or did he go straight to the top of the Kabbalistic tree? I don't think that he's gone to Kether, which is at the very top of the tree. I think that he's gone through Doth. I think he's in the supernal triad, which is the top three, Bina, Chokmah, and Kether. And but I don't think that, I think that Leto, his son, who becomes the God Emperor, that guy becomes like Kether on Earth. Like, he becomes a manifestation of Kether. Paul does not. Paul merely goes to the infinite, but doesn't choose to go all the way because he wants to retain his humanity, because he loves humankind and he is a good person and he has a very kind heart, and he doesn't want to become a god. Like, he doesn't want this. Like, he doesn't want to become a god. It's very lonely being a god. It's very lonely being a god. And so his son takes on that mantle and kind of takes it to the next step. And Paul could have done that, but he doesn't because he didn't want to give up his humanity, which I fucking get, man. Question. Call me Puffy asks. What's up, Puffy? Question. How did Jessica's voice make Scarface want to fight over her when he's deaf? Okay. Interesting. Let's talk about Jessica using the voice. So, one of them is deaf. Scarface is deaf, and one of them is not deaf. And the thing is, she knows that he reads lips. So, she makes sure that he can see the words that she's saying, even though he can't hear them. He sees the words. The other guy is poisoned, so the other guy's already he's gonna fight no matter what. This guy sees, kind of like, she just plants the idea in his mind. But then, if you notice, she rides sinuously for his benefit. You know, she rides around. You know, she's wiggling on the ground, making herself look hot as fuck. You know, like, that's what let's be real about it. Like, she is inviting, and like, Scarface understands that. He may not be able to hear her voice, but he sees a hot woman wiggling around being like, don't fight over me. You know, like, that's still going to get in his fucking head. And so that's what happened. And yeah. So, I mean, then that's the thing that's so cool is, even though, like, okay, so she is the voice. She can make anyone do anything. Well, that's kind of a boring power, because if you can make anyone do anything, you have to make it harder for her. So Frank Herbert made sure that there was a deaf person, so you had to see her use her other Bene Gesserit skills of how to get this deaf person, even though he couldn't hear her voice, and she still is able to do it, and it's fucking awesome. So that's like what a badass she is. Fausta of the South asks, do you think Paul saying he isn't who they thought he is because he sort of felt the coming of his son? He didn't see the birth of his son, only of his daughter. So do you think he felt a weird disturbance? Yeah, I think so. I think that you're right because we were just talking about that. His son, okay, it's fucking spoilers on. It's not a spoiler. His son becomes God Emperor and he becomes a worm god and he lives for thousands of years and he reigns the Imperium for thousands of years as a worm god. Okay, Paul could have done that, but he didn't want to because he wants to die a human. He doesn't want to be lonely like that. It fucking sucks. It sucks a fucking bag of dicks to do that, you know. And so, and he was in love with Chani. I mean, he's like has to watch everyone around him die. Like he can't. And so that is also, yeah, I think that's why he's saying he's not who they think he is, because they think he's going to be the one that's going to lead them on the golden path. When it's not him, it's his son. His son is the one who leads them on the golden path. He's the one they're really reaching for that they don't realize that they're reaching for. And yeah, and he does see the coming of his son. I mean, it is stated in the books that he sees that he has a son. But the thing is about future, he sees all possible future timelines, you know, and he sees that like some of these timelines this happens, but I think that he knows he's going to go kind of towards that way. But we'll get in. He does have a son Leto in the books later on, which we'll talk about, which is a whole other bag of cats. But yeah, you're right, Fausto of the South. I think you're totally on point there. Guild Mentat asks or says, in the tent, Paul delivers Leto's message to Jessica that Leto's greatest regret was not marrying her, but Leto never says that in the book. Actually, he did say that in the book, so you just missed it. He told Paul, he's like, let her know that I never doubted her for an instant, you know, like, although, wait a minute, maybe he didn't say specifically that his greatest regret was not marrying her. Maybe you're right, maybe I need to reread it. I need to go back and see that then, because is Paul embellishing because he knows that's what his mother wants to hear the most? I think Paul knows, though. I mean, Paul knows that. He sees it. I mean, he's been around his parents his whole life. He knows his father inside and out. And now that he's had this greater awareness, he sees that absolutely. And Leto says that to himself. Leto does admit it to him. Hey, Beans. Leto does admit it to himself that his greatest regret is, I should have married you, like, of all the things. And so Paul would see that and tell her. And I mean, yes, it is something that she wants to hear. And so he'd want to make her feel better. But it's also the truth. He wouldn't lie to her. Epicurious Aaron asks, why is Paul so disgusted by Jessica? Is it just how much slower she is than him now, or is it more so the Harkonnen blood? He's just upset. I mean, he's just fucking upset. He's just like become a freak. I mean, he's gonna be, again, we're talking about how lonely Leto is. It's like he's also really lonely. He's just given up his fucking humanity of just being a fucking person. He's got to be this whole other thing. His whole life has just been hijacked. His whole life has just been hijacked by this one purpose, and he doesn't really. He's just there to lead this purpose. He can't really have, you know, he I don't know. He loves Chani. Like we get into Chani later, but it's like he just like Leto. He's like, I wish that I could just run away with my girl and we didn't have all this responsibility. You know, he's taking on all this responsibility. It's such a burden, and he's mad at taking on this burden, and he's projecting it onto his mother because she bore him, and she's a part of why he is the way he is. Like she trained him for this. She was trying to bear a Kwisatz Haderach. Like she was reaching for him. And he's upset. And he's also disturbed that she is slower than him. And that's something, too. It's like, I can be a very fast thinker. And I get frustrated with people who, when I'm around people who don't think as fast as I do, and you have to kind of wait for them to catch up. Like, it is really frustrating. It is really frustrating. You're just like, what the fuck? Why don't you see this? Like, why are we still back here? You know, like, fuck. But, so he's also, like, dealing with that frustration for the first time of, like, why is this person, who's the person that's been teaching me, who's the person that I thought was so, that was like this goddess. I mean, your dad and your mom are like a god and goddess to you when you're a kid. But now he's surpassed her, and he's just like disgusted that she's a human. Just like he was also disturbed by his dad being a human in front of him. You know, it's like he's surpassed them, and then now, but if now they're just down there, then, you know, it's sad. It's a crazy moment. So that's why. But he gets over it. He gets over the whole thing. He's like, in the end, he says he can't be mad at his mom or the Bene Gesserit or anybody because this is something bigger than all of them. You know, this is something that has to do with race, human race consciousness, and what like the human race is trying to do to itself. Space Zeppelin says Paul's not the most woke person yet. They're still guild navigators. He's more woke than guild navigators, for sure. He's more woke than guild navigators. But he's not the most woke that he could be. But he's the most woke in the universe, in my opinion. But he could still be more woke. There's other levels of wokeness, because that's the thing, it never ends. You can always keep going up that ladder until you are fucking God Emperor.
But guild navigators have other talents he doesn't have, right?
Well, guild navigators have talents that are similar to his talents. They're similar in that they can see through. They can see through space. They can't necessarily see through time, though. I mean, it's like verges a little bit on time, but not like the way Paul sees it. I don't think. I mean, this is all very theoretical, guys. Louis Letters asked, did the Bene Gesserit order start manipulating religions to counteract the faith of the Imperium on Ix, or was it only to ensure their ends? Well, as I was saying, they're very Machiavellian. The ends justify the means. And it's not about counteracting the faith of the Imperium. It's just about protecting themselves and placing themselves in positions of power, because the more positions of power you have, the more power you have. And the more power you have, the more you can make shit happen that you want to have happen, consciously. So that's like, they just want power, and but through indirect means. And this is one of their huge ways of gaining power through indirect means, is through manipulating prophecies and seeding stuff like that, seeding mythologies. Marcus Macabre asks, Frank Herbert doesn't exactly describe a lot in terms of visuals. Do you feel that the David Lynch film influences your visuals as you read through Dune? You're right. Frank Herbert really doesn't talk in visuals, like, especially if you've read Game of Thrones. Like, if you've read George R.R. Martin, that motherfucker is like, and the pie smelled like this and tasted like this in the day, and they were on these gilded chairs and wearing slashed velvet. It's like he's just going on and on, like this guy. And I like that. Like, there's a part of me that enjoys that. But I love how Frank Herbert, he doesn't have time for that shit. Like, Frank Herbert is putting so much into this book that he just, like, tells it, and there's not a lot of frills. And he also, I think, wants to leave it open to your imagination. He doesn't want to lock his ideals into this of what... I mean, there's a few things, like, that hair colors. There's a couple hair colors. There's a couple eye colors. There's a few things that they talk about. But by and large, he leaves it open to interpretation, which I think is a lot of times better, because everyone can come up with cool things in their brain. But absolutely, like, David Lynch's Dune, because I saw that when I was a kid. I wasn't able to read the books until I was much older, but I saw the movie, and the visuals in the movie absolutely hooked me. I love the way Gaius Helen Mohim looks with her bald head and that cap on, that dress, and these flowing robes, the blue within blue eyes, the set pieces, like how the Imperium looks when they're in the Emperor's throne room, and it's just like such a tableau. Like, you have these people in these crazy outfits, these crazy, like, French court looking Louis XV shit, everywhere, like with dogs and the pugs, and it's just such a great, I love it. I love the visual style. I love the costuming. I love the sets. I love everything is awesome except for the Baron. I feel like the Baron, the Harkonnens are like too much. Like, the Baron's way too much. He's not supposed to be a crazy animal. Like, he's very calculated. He's an animal, but he's a calculated animal. And he's not supposed to be that disgusting. And they kind of went too far with the Harkonnens. But everything else, I feel like, looks so cool. And I absolutely do, like, when everyone thinks of a still suit, you think of that black suit, like, with the pads and stuff, like, that's absolutely, like, ingrained in my mind, even though I know they wear cloaks and all this other stuff, and it's, like, I'm sure it's a little different than what Herbert had intended. It very much influences my visuals when I think about it, for sure. Absolutely.
But it also could look completely different.
But, yeah, but that's the thing that's so cool, is it could look completely different. But you know that you want to make it somewhat, like, 15th century, that imperial, that time, like, it's kind of, it echoes that time in our own human history. So you're going to have those more royal family imperial outfits, like that whole thing going on. But yeah, I love it. I think there's a lot of cool stuff from that movie, a lot of cool visuals. Fuchsia Gamer asks, I keep on seeing parallels between Dune and the original Star Wars. Is it just me? The planet desert and the Messiah-type figure rising from it. The voice, force, politics. I was wondering how much you know about the inspiration for Star Wars, CBG. I think that George Lucas was inspired by a lot of different things. I think that George Lucas was an eager sponge. I think, like Frank Herbert, he was absorbing all of these other stories around him, all of these comic books. I mean, Star Wars is very much also influenced by Jack Kirby, by his New Gods series that he did with DC Comics. And so,
Wow. Need some water?
yeah, I need some water. Thought there was no water in there.
Can I fill this?
Yeah, Tyson wants to field this one. You gonna come on
I think
camera?
the assumption is that people keep alluding to is that, oh, one artist was definitely inspired by another artist that came from artist. That happens. But also, the similarities between all these artists is that they're all discovering truths of
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
Esoteric ideas,
Yeah.
concepts that are really far out there.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm interested in discovering.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
What is the force really?
Yeah. Okay, so T was saying that a lot of people, like, they notice that these artists are inspired by artists who are inspired by artists, and that's a thing that absolutely happens. And we all want to pin, but because we live in this society where we want to put everything in one box, it's like we want to point to the one thing that this guy ripped off, you know, like, oh, this is the thing. And the truth about art is that everyone is inspired by what has come before them. And everyone uses those things that you are inspired by, and you synthesize those things, and you do put them in your own artwork. And you refine these ideas. You come in contact with these ideas through other media. You find a truth in these ideas through fiction. And then you take those truths and you synthesize them into your own new truth. You add to it. You put your own filter on it, your own flavor on it. And that's what Star Wars is I think that George Lucas was absorbing all these really amazing alchemical stories, whether it's Jack Kirby's New Gods, whether it's Dune, whether it's, I know there's other things too that it really references. I can't think of them at the moment. But I think that he absolutely did read all of these things, and he saw the amazing things out of all of them and just kind of mushed them all up together into his own thing.
But what I'm saying is that he could have not. What I'm saying is that the things that he might have based the force on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're right about that.
In some,
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. Okay, so you could say the force and the voice. You could say that that's similar. You could also say the force and the source from the New Gods are similar. But they're all the same concept, and this isn't a concept that is from one art form. This is a greater concept from the universe, from like tapping into these occult supernatural powers of being able to control your fellow man.
What I'm saying is it's not all complete fiction.
But it's all based on things that you find in our history, in our religions, in our philosophies. So it's like, it's a whole thing. So yeah, he was absolutely inspired, but he was absolutely inspired by Dune. I mean, George Lucas was absolutely inspired by Dune, but he was also inspired by a lot of other stuff. And I think also that's why what George Lucas did with Star Wars was that he took all these things that were a lot less accessible. Like Dune is not accessible to the common man. It's not accessible to the common man. I think that like large scale mass audiences. I think that the New Gods, that's something most people just don't read comics and they're not going to. I mean, that's just how comics roll. So it's like he's finding these things that are just like that people aren't going to necessarily get access to, that he's understood and consumed, and then transmuted a lot of these ideas into something that is more elegant. Like he's taken these very complicated ideas and reduced them down in an elegant way to where they can be consumed by mass audiences in a way that works for them. And I mean, that's a superpower in itself, is being able to take a bunch of different concepts and then refining them and then making them palatable for a mass audience like Star Wars has been. I mean, it changed the game. But also, I mean, he did push the envelope in his own way. He did a lot of things with Star Wars, like the special effects. I mean, he like brought the level of science fiction, like movie making, up a notch. Up a real, like, raised the bar. So hats off to George Lucas for that. But also, don't stop at Star Wars. Keep going, because Star Wars is just the tip of the iceberg. You can get into Star Wars, but then when you find the Dune stuff, and then you find the New Gods, and you find everything else, like use it as a starting point. Like, if you like that, you'll like this other shit. I'm pretty sure. Generally speaking. Okay. So, Mirioland asks, how do you interpret prescience? Should we go for a rational or a metaphysical explanation? Is there a place outside this universe where all possibilities lie? A place Paul can look into? I don't know much about the Tree of Life. Is it supposed to contain all of the past, future possibilities of the universe? Thank you very much. Go, go, Team 19. Go, go, Team 19. It's like, go, go, Gadget. I used to love Inspector Gadget. Well, Mirioland, you should check out my 16-minute video where I talk about this shit. Because yes, on the Tree of Life, at the very top, at Kether, the very top sphere, that is the monad. That is everything. That is everything. Everything that has happened, everything that is happening, everything that will happen, everything that this universe is encapsulated in its perfect harmony. It's like God in harmony with itself. You know, it's just like all encapsulated. And we all have a spark of this. Like everything around us is a product of that. So I think that he can see, and like, it's like, think of it like the sun. Like, it's there and its light is down on you, and it creates everything, you know, like we can't live in darkness. We have to have plants, you know, but like you can't look directly at the sun. If you look directly at the sun, it's going to burn your fucking eyes out, you know? And that's what like looking into Kether is looking directly into the sun. And so he is able, so if you think about Kether, I don't think that he's looking at Kether because it would burn his eyes out. And actually he does become blind like later on. So it's a whole other fucking thing. But Kether is illuminating everything. Like he's seeing everything. He's benefiting from the illumination of Kether because he's broken through Doth to the supernal triad where you have Kether, Hokmah, and Bina. So he's able to see the light of it, but he's not looking directly at it, is my thing. So does that make any sense, guys? I know it's a lot. I already answered that one. Oh, Gabosaurus Rex. This is awesome. Good fucking eye, dude. Herbert uses a lot of oral weapons, like the Chris knife, which is made of the tooth of a worm. The Leto has a poison gas tooth. There's also the Bene Gesserit, the voice. Is Herbert trying to say the best resolution of a problem is by using one's word or mouth? Oh my God, you're so right. I didn't even make that connection. That's why I love reading this with you guys, because you guys see things that I'm not even fucking seeing. You're totally right, dude. Like, okay, so if you think about, again, let's go back to Kabbalistic, Judaic biblical stuff. There was, like, when God first creates the universe, you know, there was the Word. You know, there was the Word, and the Word was God. You know, and then God made the world with the Word. And so the Kabbalistic idea is that God literally used the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, to create the world. Like 22 letters and 10 numbers created our entire universe. And there is power in our voices in what we say, and it's something that we don't really think about. Like, we create, it is a power, it is a spell that you're creating. Like when you talk to people, I mean, it is like, that's how everything happens in this world, is by communication. Everything that is built around us is based on us communicating with one another. That is the thing that separates us from animals. Animals do not communicate with letters and numbers, you know, like we do. And that's the big difference, and that's why we're able to build all of this shit, and that's why we're like gods. You know, that's why we have a piece of God in us, and we use that piece to create things, and we create them by talking to one another, by writing to one another, and by using math. You know, it's like writing, math, and speaking to one another is like a whole thing, and that's how everything is created. That's how the universe was created.
I think that Donald Trump uses some form of voice to seduce people. It doesn't work on everyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't work on me or you.
Right.
But it seduces people.
Yeah, T-Bone just brought up that Donald Trump he has a version of the voice that he uses that works on a lot of people because he sounds very confident. Everything he says sounds very confident, that he's not worried, whatever. You know, it's got that New York thing about it, you know, that New York cockiness. And people love that confident leader. People want to hear confidence in a leader's voice because it makes them feel safe. just hearing that confidence. And so that, I mean, like we all use the voice. Like people think of the voice like, oh, it'd be amazing to make someone do whatever you want to with just talking to them, but we do that every day. I mean, I just said, hey guys, I need some water. And then poof, after I said that, a fucking cup of water came in my fucking hand. That was a fucking magic spell that I just said. And then water happened, like just because I said something. Like people think that what you say doesn't matter, but absolutely, like, and you need to be careful about what words you use, how you use words. Like I'm trying to become a lot more conscious of that.
Oh, we're out right now.
Oh.
We've been out for like.
Okay, we're back. Okay, I have some technical difficulties. Communication breakdowns, talking to one another. So that's what happens. So let's move on to another question. Cart Montke asks, if the Harkonnens are so freaking insane, pedophiles, murderers, sadists, torturers, which they are, why would the Bene Gesserit want to continue that line and make their Messiah? Well, it's based on some bloodline shit that they're doing. Like these people are refined, like they have these skills, and we'll see this with Fade Rautha later. We haven't seen Fade Rautha in action, and Fade is a fucking specimen, dude. Like this guy has been bred, like, I mean, he's a super badass, and so they want these super refined humans, and so they have to pick from these Imperials. That's how they've been refining their breeding programs, through these Imperial court members. And so the Harkonnens just have certain genetic material that they need, that they have certain traits that they need to be able to create the Messiah. And also, if you think about it, I mean, you know, the most beautiful plants grow out of shit, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they just had certain shit that they needed, you know? It's, I'm not entirely sure, but it's totally, yeah. It's not about their personalities, it's about their genetics. Fausta of the South asks, was Dune a main part of helping you find your spiritual path? I would say that Dune is absolutely a huge influence on me spiritually. I wouldn't say it's like the only thing. I think that it's a combination. I'm constantly scanning for alchemical works of fiction that inspire me to like have greater awarenesses and awakenings, because I think that fiction is a really great, for me, it works really well. It's a simulation. And if I consume more of these stories that are really well thought out, then I will, by osmosis, become smarter myself and become more well thought out. You know, it's like being a sponge. And so you put out what you take in. And it's just like feeding your body. You know, you have to feed your mind and you have to feed your soul. And I really enjoy stories. Stories are one of my favorite things to enjoy, because as I was saying earlier, I'm very much in my mind. I'm very like intellectually based. And my mind works really fast. So and that's why I like things like Dune, because it's a lot to chew on. I'm fast at digesting things. I digest things very quickly. And so something like this makes me slow down. Like this is like got some meat to it, you know? Like this is enjoyable. Like this is like a fine, just perfectly cooked steak, you know? It's just like the cow was just murdered like an hour ago, and it's just still bleeding on my plate, and it's just like the best. Like that's what this sort of stuff is. It's the finest. And so, but it absolutely is a huge influence on me. Dune is a huge influence on me, on my life, on how I think about the world, on my spiritual path. It's just led me to such great awarenesses. Even this week and last week, thinking about Paul's awakening, in my own ways, I have to have my own awakenings to think about Paul's awakenings, because it was really tough for me to try to encapsulate and write a script about what happens to Paul. Like, how do you write about someone who's just been enlightened and like their mind has touched like the infinite? You know, how do you talk about that to thousands of people on the internet in a way that everyone can understand? Like, it's kind of it's a lot, because I'm not enlightened. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, I'm trying to be the most enlightened person I can be. I'm constantly trying to refine myself, but I'm nowhere on that level. So just even me having to sit there and think about what this means and chew on this, it's like it helps me to become more aware myself, you know? And I feel like I said, every time I read Dune, I do break into new awarenesses. I feel like it makes me smarter every time I read it. So I love it, and it's one of my favorite books. That's why it's one of my fucking faves. And I hope you guys are digging it too. I mean, if you're here for session 5, you must be digging it, because, you know, like, this is a commitment. I know that I'm asking you guys a huge commitment to read this, because this is not This is like a real commitment to read this book with me. So
Okay.
thank you guys.
2-3 more questions.
All right, we're gonna do 2 or 3 more questions, and we're gonna wrap it up for today. Okay, so this is a good one. Game of Thrones. Let's talk about Bran versus Paul as the three-eyed raven versus Muad'Dib. Question from that Eddie Hex. Do you think Paul becoming Muad'Dib inspired Brandon Stark becoming the three-eyed raven? Especially with the recent episode of Game of Thrones, I couldn't help but make the comparison. You're absolutely fucking right. Without no Paul Atreides, there would not be a Brandon Stark. Like 100%. Well, it was absolute, but he is
That's what I'm saying
inspired.
before. Don't you think it's possible that 2 different artists could have tapped into concepts?
Well, of
like
course.
this?
I mean, but it's the Ubermensch. It's the Ubermensch idea that Nietzsche tapped into. I mean, this is not a new.
Sure.
This is what Jesus is, the Messiah, the biblical. Like this has always been a thing. The Ubermensch has always been a thing. But I think that George R. R. Martin is absolutely aware of Paul Atreides 100%, and that he can't help. His writing can't help but be influenced by it because he's been in contact with it.
Both. What I'm saying is that's both possible and false at the same time.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's absolutely inspired by it, but he's also inspired by higher things as well, and he has his own things that he's putting into it, for sure. But yes, he is inspired by it. I'm not going to say he's not inspired by this, because without Paul, like, Bran would be different. There wouldn't be a Bran as we know him. Like, Paul set a benchmark, you know, and, like, everything that comes after him, it's like he changed everything. Paul changed everything in the literary world as well as in his own fucking universe, you know? Like, Paul did change everything in the science fiction universe. This is the #1 best-selling science fiction novel of all time. This won the Hugo. This won some Nebula Awards. Like, this shit's huge, okay? Like, this is a big fucking deal. So, but yeah, they have so many similarities. But I love how in Game of Thrones, like, these writers, these TV writers are having to try to talk about three-eyed raven stuff, which hasn't been brought up in the Game of Thrones book through George R. R. Martin. Like, it hasn't, like, Bran is at the cave, he's with the raven, but, like, I don't think that his great awakening has really happened. He's just starting. And so we're having to see the TV writers write Bran's awakening before we get to see George R. R. Martin, really what he's going to do with it. And the thing is that these fucking guys who are talking about Bran, the way they talk about him being the three-eyed raven is kind of not, like, it's simpler. It's like it's more fantasy. It's more like a superpower. I mean, I think of him as like fucking Professor X. When I saw him in that fucking wheelchair, I saw Bran in that fucking wheelchair and what's her face, who's playing Jean Grey, and I thought, okay, Arya's like Wolverine. And then, you know, Bran is now fucking Professor X. It's like, and then you have Jon, who's like a living dead man. He's got a fucking mutant X-Men power. You know, they just turned them all into X-Men. They turned the Starks into X-Men. And that's fine. I mean, that's not what George R. R. Martin, I think, is going to do with the three-eyed raven. I think that his version of the three-eyed raven is going to be a lot more interesting, and I can't wait to see what he does with it. Because it's going to be more realistic. Just like Paul's awakening is more realistic. Like, his awakening Paul's awakening is created through real life awakenings. Like, Frank Herbert has studied enlightenment, you know? Like, Frank Herbert has studied this shit, and so the way he writes about it is very realistic because it's based on realistic concepts that happen in our reality. So I think that the three-eyed raven, the way that's going to be presented in the books, is going to be way more interesting than it is in the show. But I'm enjoying it. I mean, it's still fun to think about Bran being this fucking Kwisatz Haderach, like. But he's like, I don't want to rule. Like, he's like, I don't want to be the ruler. Like, I just, my mind's been open to the infinite, and I just don't care anymore. Like, I just don't give a fuck. And I don't know if he's being possessed by the three-eyed raven. He may have been overtaken by the personality of the three-eyed raven, which would kind of make him an abomination, which is something that we talk about with St. Ollie of the Knife, Paul's sister, when she comes in later. We haven't even gotten to Paul's sister. Like, you guys are gonna fucking freak out. But yeah, there's definitely some similarities there. You're not wrong. One more question. I'm out of questions. Do you have a question for me, T?
That's it.
That's it. Okay, I got all my questions on my phone. I got all my questions on Patreon. So that's it today for Session 5 Live Q&A. Thank you guys. We're going to be back Session 6 next Sunday. Same Dune time, same Dune channel. Next week is a lot less crazy, so, and I won't be all fucking hungover teacher lady. So thanks guys for coming out, and become a member on Patreon. Check out that 60-minute video, guys. Whatever. It's fucking awesome. So see you later. I'm gonna go to sleep now. Take a nap.